Equipped with the right skills, knowledge, and most of all the right questions, you too could have the success you're looking for. Join Laura Atchison as she hosts the Entrepreneur Masterclass on the All Business Radio Network. It's been said success comes from not only what you know, but who you know. But what if you don't have access to the top experts? Well, that has changed. Laura Atchison, best-selling author, international speaker, and business strategist, brings you top experts from all around the world to help you take your business and your life to new heights. With today's Entrepreneur Masterclass, here's Laura.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Entrepreneur Masterclass. I'm your host, Laura Stewart Atchison, and this show is all about becoming an entrepreneur in your business, life, or your career. And this is July 4th week, so for Americans, it is not just about barbecue, fireworks, and s'mores, which are my personal favorite, even though they are everything that I shouldn't be eating, but sometimes you just have to say, I want my s'mores. It's a time to reflect on the privileges we are so fortunate as a nation to have. Most of all, we are so fortunate for our freedom. And those freedoms come at a price, though. My dad served in the Army Corps of Engineers during the Korean War, and he was so proud to have served and talked about what he learned by being in the military right up until the day he died. My guest today was in the first graduating class of women at West Point, and she retired after 34 years as a colonel in the U.S. Army. What she learned about leadership has enabled her and many other military personnel to be successful leaders in all areas of life. And some of the people that come out of the military are the most wanted for leadership opportunities in corporate America. So in honor of my country's birthday this week, since there are so many of my listeners that are international, I am so proud to introduce all of you, my wonderful listeners, to retired Colonel Deb Lewis. Her full bio is on my website at lauraatchison.com/blog, but I want to give you just a few highlights. West Point graduate, first female graduating class ever at West Point. I don't know about you, but I've heard stories about it's like for men to get through West Point. Can you imagine what she went through? And I happen to know some of the stories. She's got a Harvard MBA, Army Colonel, Bronze Star, along with many other military honors. She served combat tours in Iraq. She headed a $3 billion construction program in Iraq, had over 850 people working for her at different points in time during different positions she held in the Army. She was the Inspector General for Washington State. She supported the Joint Chiefs of Staff. She founded a nonprofit with her husband. She's an author, an entrepreneur, a mom, and my dear friend, and one of my advisors. Please welcome Deborah Lewis. Deborah, are you there?
I am here. Aloha.
Aloha. Oh, and I forgot to tell everybody, Deborah now lives in Hilo, Hawaii. So she's calling in from Hawaii right now to Florida. So two wonderful beach places, but I so want to get to Hawaii and see you out there. So thank you for being on my show.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here, Laura. I can't thank you and all your listeners. You know, what you're doing to try to ensure that our entrepreneurs succeed is so important for our nation. You know, it's really the bedrock and foundation of our values, being able to do whatever you want to and be able to succeed. And so I'm excited. I think we're going to have fun today. I mean, that's the highest criteria, is to have fun and have a great impact.
Absolutely.
So,
and
I just
want to really start by saying thank you for your service to our country and all you did and still do every day to protect this incredible country.
Well, I want to make this really, really clear, is that when you walked into my life, it was when I was transitioning out of the military to be an author. And to me, I'll start crying right now, but you were a bright, shining light to me when I was feeling not so successful as I was starting out and confused about, you know, I've been trying to write it, but I'm not happy with the format of sharing what I've learned through those many experiences, not just about leadership, but dealing with people. And you stood up there and you offered your help to everyone at that audience, but I really thought you were talking to me. So you, since that time, have just been such a light of love and support to our efforts. And so I can't thank you enough and be very clear on that. What you do for others is so special.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. It was a privilege meeting you that day. We connected, and I'm so glad that we've become friends. So it's a gift every single day of my life that I treasure. So I think
that's one thing with your listeners is to know that, whatever it may feel like to them, when they continue to give to others, they just won't know what difference they make in the lives of the people around them. And to always try to do your best and be kind and loving to those around you, because it really, you might be just that moment for people that what they needed, that helping hand, because everyone, let's face it, has challenges and have doubts. And it doesn't matter how many things you've succeeded in the past, there's always events in your life that can bring you to your knees. So thank you, Laura.
Thank you. And that's a perfect lead-in to what I wanted to ask you. And I know the answer to this, but I think it's so important for my listeners to hear this in your own words. You were in the first graduating class of women at West Point.
That's
at
true.
A time when that was not a conversation that people were willing to have. But the opportunity opened, and you said you wanted to be there. And I know for you, it was an easy decision, yet a tough decision to be there. And you learned a lot while you were there. Can you share with us your thoughts going into West Point, some of the lessons that you learned, and what it meant to you to get through that?
Well, I thank you for asking about that experience, because, some people are surprised sometimes by my answers. But when I went to West Point, even though my father had been there 30 years before, I never had visited West Point. I just knew the community of people that surrounded us, like larger families. And when I arrived there, I had grown up in an environment of you can do anything. My father we played touch football. My mother made sure that I was out and about. I learned to ride horses and swim and do things competitively with my older brothers. And then I entered West Point, where I faced an environment that had really been, as we know when society talks about controversial issues, social change actually happens most at the first real implementation in the military, because that's where it's going to happen, and that's where the rubber meets the road. And that particular event was preceded by a lot of people making these unbelievable, hurtful, outlandish statements that in hindsight you think, what were they thinking? But that's what happens when people face change. And entrepreneurs are always making changes, improvements, and things. So you have to understand that you're not going to get loving arms to embrace you and say, wow, that's a great idea. In fact, that's the rarity. And so when I went there, it truly was, it's like a commodity. It didn't matter who I was. I faced a lot of harsh responses. Now, that wasn't everything. I faced a lot of great leaders as well. And I tell everyone that I learned a lot. It was good for me during that period. And it really did force me to examine who I was, who I wanted to be. And it could be so easy to respond in kind, because I saw that as well. But I think it took more courage to not respond in kind, to figure out a better way. And I had one early success that I'll mention. One early success when someone who had been actually pretty close to me said something, I won't go into what they said down the hallway in front of a bunch of people. But when they did that, it's just like when you get sucker punched and you just think, oh my gosh, it's bad enough when people who don't know you say harsh things, but when someone who knows you says something that's really hurtful, I think that's, below the belt kind of cut. And he said something to me in the hallway, and I just said, oh my gosh. And what I ended up doing, I don't know where it came from, but I sat him down one-on-one, and I repeated back exactly what he had told me in the tone, how he did it, and couched it, the environment, so he could feel what it felt like to be me. And I told him how it felt like to me. And I said, I thought you were my friend. And to his credit, he was properly horrified that he had done such a thing, because people say things, just knee-jerk reactions for all untold reasons. And as a result of that conversation, one, he never did it again. And I learned a great lesson, I think, that under real extreme adversity, try to be your best self. Try to give people the benefit of the doubt and ask those questions accordingly. And that's really served me well throughout the years.
I would think that that's something not easy to do when you are being attacked from mostly every front, from the cadets and the staff, the instructors, everybody at West Point, and the media who don't want you there. What do you think enabled you to be able to respond from that high place? Because I know that that's who you are as a person. But what do you think gave you that strength?
I think it strengthened my inner core. I was lucky. Not everybody grows up with a family who loves you and supports you and forces you to kind of get out of your comfort zone regularly. I mean, I was always out of my comfort zone, trying new things. Jumping horses is pretty scary, and you have to do it with an animal. Going and swimming and winning in those events, I think that gave me a great foundation. And I go back to when I was horrified at how people would treat me. There's a couple ways I went. One was give them the benefit of the doubt, every bit of the benefit of the doubt. And then a lot of times when those circumstances were harsh, is I really started to understand that it wasn't about me. I was just a vehicle for them to vent their own personal frustration. And I became pretty good. I could bring out the worst in some people. They would really... But, if they could vent with me, I always thought, well, there's a lot of people out there who can't take this. And I would rather they do it with me so then I can engage them. Notice I don't say confront them. I engage them with a quiet strength to try to help them see what's happening. Didn't always work. Sometimes was risky proposition. But I think when you start finding some strategies and tactics that work for you, even under the worst, I won't tell you that I didn't have, my personal relationships, that didn't help me until years after graduating.
Okay.
You have
Deborah,
a lot
we're
of
going to have to go to a
self-doubt.
commercial break right now. We'll be right back.
After this short break. Welcome back to the Entrepreneur Masterclass. Equipped with the right skills, knowledge, and most of all the right questions, you too can have the success you want. With more of today's show, here is best-selling author, international speaker, and business strategist, Laura Atchison.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Entrepreneur Masterclass's Independence Day week here in America. And I am here with my guest, Colonel Deborah Lewis, retired, amazing entrepreneur, dear friend, and we're talking about her experience being one of the first women's graduating class at West Point. And Deborah, Forbes magazine recently wrote an article about creating leaders at West Point, because so many of the graduates are not only military leaders, but they're leaders in all areas of society, including major industry. You guys are just considered some of the top catches for industry. What are 3 big lessons you learned from those experiences that you can share with our entrepreneurs? You headed 3 organizations responsible for over $400 million in programs and a $3.3 billion construction program during the war. Not simple to do a construction project under the best circumstances, but now you're in a war zone. You must have some great lessons you can share with us.
Well, I thank you for the question. It's one where people think that it's the task, and I will tell you my 3 answers all deal with people. Because when you're in these situations, you've seen examples where people are just together, they're able to overcome insurmountable odds. And definitely my wartime experience with a very small crew compared to our big mission we work together in such a way that you just can't imagine. But 15 to 20% of them being all volunteers rotated every month. And so how do you make things happen in such a hugely diverse environment where we had people from many nations working together, plus many services? And first of all, it starts off the things that I learned at West Point. It's yourself, knowing yourself, what you bring, being an expert, not being unafraid of hard work and becoming skillful, even when the signals around you may indicate you're not getting it. Like at West Point, sometimes it would say, because I had some people sweet on me, they were actually mean to me.
Wow.
I didn't know they wanted to go out with me, but some of them, they were just the meanest of the mean. But because of the way they said it, they said, I'm a goof up or something like that. Well, they needed to point the finger back at them. But the reality is, when I went to Iraq, it was very, very clear that those hard-earned lessons served me well, not only to know that I had the strength to succeed, but then the other piece of the people is how do you work with others? How do you make those deep connections, those trusting connections quickly and be aligned so that you can accomplish these amazing things? And then third, how do your teams, the people part of it is how do your teams produce and be able to do anything together? When you come from such different backgrounds, how do you embrace diversity at every level of the word? Because you don't know where that answer is going to be coming from. It could be, as we had, married couples who were pretty senior, or it could come from the youngest person who joined your team, maybe just 19 years old. You just don't know where the answers are. But if your ability to quickly bring those people together and unify yourself based on values, that's really the bedrock, and then network and do whatever you have to get the job done. It is so exciting. It is like a roller coaster going up and down, but I'll tell you what, I wouldn't trade anything for the ride. It really proved during those times that everything I had learned in my entire life, not just from West Point or Harvard Business School or the people that I'd met, but everything was needed to bear. And I'd say our future is going to be equally or even more so challenging with the economy, with conflict throughout the world, complexity. We're in a volatile situation, and so the people piece of it cannot be understated.
So that leads me to a question, which, of course, since everybody calls me the question lady, of course, or the chief questioner, how important is having the right mindset then going into situations? I mean, I would think that you have had to somehow manage to keep a frame for which you focus your day, you center yourself, and you make your choices from that place. How important is that, and how do you spend your day figuring all this out?
I think that I learned really early, especially at West Point, when I had to do this physical training, which was, I think I ran 1.5 miles and we ended up riding 2 miles the first day. And I didn't fall out, what they call, drop out of a run for the entire first year, despite my lack of background in the skill. And really all women, we didn't know what women would do. And I learned to control my heartbeat. That's a piece. But when you start controlling your mind, when you figure out that your focus matters for everything, that's such a power that you give yourself. And I learned that pretty early, and it continued to get honed. I really encourage people to challenge themselves often and young so that when they get older, they can just, they embrace it as opposed to fear it. And each day I start off with powerful meditations, one that I had to create myself because I just couldn't find one that had the words that I needed, and another one from dear friends I probably listened to over 500 times. But I find that when you reflect, you pause, you create that space that's so important to, and it's the difference. I taught problem solving as well. I went back to West Point and taught problem solving. And what they taught me is that our first response, which is often our knee-jerk response to anything, all our choices, is almost never optimal. What does that mean? That means that the choices you make when you don't pause and you reflect will probably cause you even more problems than you started with because you just came off with the first answer on the top of your head. But
okay,
yet,
so wait a minute. Let me. So the choices you make when you don't pause and reflect, it sounds like you're saying, may often come back and bite you.
Yes, they're rarely optimal, not statistically, and usually I've seen them cause far more problems because they look like a superficial answer, but that's because you're not looking at it comprehensively or holistically.
And I'm a big fan of telling people you need to understand why you're making that choice and where those choices come from. And if you don't stop and reflect, then you end up with choices that as soon as you're living them, you're like, why am I doing this?
And you're also falling to the tyranny of what I would call the tyranny of mirror neurons. If someone's upset next to you, you're going to get upset. We could talk a long time about that, but that's the difference between accessing your wisdom of your entire life and falling to the fight or flight of your reptilian brain that is just a knee-jerk reaction, which has nothing to do with really long-term solutions.
So how important do you feel the questions are that you ask yourself and others?
I think they dictate the quality of life that you're living. I have a friend, Doug Krug, who called it the ultimate empowerment tool, and I know that questions are all about what you do, Laura. You know, I met him in '96, and then you just reinforced it, and the hard questions you asked me, but important questions, that you can influence people through the questions that you ask, not in a manipulative way, but because for whose reason do people change? Did they change because you tell them? Or do they change because they come to the same conclusion you do? And I would say that if you are asking a question and people don't respond the way you expect them to, it's a good chance they've got something else going on that may be something you overlooked. And so those questions that you ask yourself and others, I found out, for example, at nighttime, I asked myself really bad questions. I would go horribly negative. I could be positive the whole day and focused on what I wanted, not what I wanted to avoid. And yet at night, when I looked at my list that I hadn't got completed, I would say, why are you doing this? This is terrible. How come you can't complete this list? You know, these are questions that have nothing to do with the importance of the things that I spent my time on, that I actually went with the flow and flexible, but they really, I started writing out what the questions were I was asking myself, and I was horrified at some of these negative ones. It's like, where did that come from? And perhaps it's habit. I don't know, but maybe it's what you learned from your family. I don't know, but you have to take a hard look at the questions you're asking yourself first, and then the ones you ask others, because if they respond in a way unexpected, it's a chance something's going on there, and it's not usually what you think.
I like that. It's not usually what you think. I've seen that so often in my own life. If I react quickly without pausing, I'm always shocked afterwards because I go, wait a minute, if I had thought about that, there was something else going on there and I didn't even need to react. Sort of like what you said happened in the hallway while you're at West Point. You chose to respond to that person and the attack that you heard them saying versus reacting to it and just going off and being upset. And because you responded and took the time to understand it and let them understand how it sounded and what that made you feel, you were able to shift that person probably for life from that moment. Would you? I can't thank you enough, Laura, for giving me another insight, is that for my whole life I've always told myself that, you know, you're never really good on the comeback. When people do such outrageous things, I never have something to say because I just can't respond in any kind of productive way other than a knee-jerk reaction. And so I've always, you know, restrained myself rather than say something I'll regret. And from what you're telling me, you know, hey, wait a minute, I need to look at that too. That's probably a strength, not a weakness. It's a strength. It's totally a strength. And you should definitely be thinking about it that way.
I suspect I'm not alone in that. There's probably a few of your audience that probably wishes we could be clever as some of the people that we hear, but in reality, we're probably doing really good.
Yeah, we are, because if you respond in that quick knee-jerk reaction, now there's even more cleanup that needs to happen versus just stepping back, because probably that comment from that other person really had nothing to do with you. And when we come back, we're going to talk more with Deborah Lewis. We'll be right back after the break.
Listening to the Entrepreneur Masterclass. Laura and her guests return after this short break. Welcome back to the Entrepreneur Masterclass. Equipped with the right skills, knowledge, and most of all the right questions, you too can have the success you want. With more of today's show, here is best-selling author, international speaker, and business strategist, Laura Atchison.
Hey, everybody. We are back with Deborah Lewis, retired colonel from the U.S. Army, and we've been talking about how important questions are, the lessons she's learned to help entrepreneurs move forward, including bringing you are what you bring, how you work with others, how teams network and operate. It's all about the people. And then the big thing is responding versus reacting. So, Deborah, I'd like you to talk about some new stuff that you're doing, because I think it's so important. You know, you talk about how important it is for entrepreneurs to get to know themselves well and tell their own story. So can you talk to that a little bit and talk about Sunrise Aloha?
Okay. Two pieces. I'll talk about the entrepreneurs getting to know themselves well and tell their own story. You know, I was on a glide path being in the military, as many people are, but there's others who are in service professions, and they go their whole life. And then you can't do it your whole life. You can't do it for your remaining days. You have to change, and people are changing jobs far more frequently, so being an entrepreneur is a great place to be right now. And initially, it was hard for me to tell my own story, to talk about it, because that seemed to be something that, like a used car salesman. I'm sorry, some people sell used cars maybe on the show, but it didn't
the stereotype
right.
of the used car salesman.
Yes, the stereotype, yes. It just didn't feel right. And then as I've been looking and reviewing and watching, today people aren't necessarily, there are very few things we buy as a commodity. What we really are buying is the story behind the product, the story behind the effort, the story behind the person. And that's what moves people. And so being able, with all its warts and everything, you know, that was the other hard thing. Well, you project this appearance of great success. They're perfect, right? Perfectly imperfect is a better description. And telling your own story where you can actually touch your emotion. When we were at that authors event, the conference where I met you at, that one, I actually cried 5 times.
I remember seeing you with the red eyes.
Yeah, I never cried. And why is that? My belief from the military was never show your emotion. Never show your tears. That's a sign of weakness. But I've since learned that actually engaging your emotion, engaging the heart is the quickest way you can connect with people and you can make a difference in their lives. And if you're not doing what you're doing in a way that reaches out to that audience that's eagerly searching for what you want from them, then you're really doing a disservice to them. And once I got that, I got it wrong. And the other one was you have to value what you do. You have to value it, because if you and I've seen this in classrooms, I've seen this in other ways, if you don't value and you just give it away, people often don't value you. They don't value what you offered them, and they go and they stick it in their drawer because they have no skin in the game. But when you tell your own story, you have now engaged their heart and connect. And so that's where and you have to tell your own story, not someone else's story. It's your story, and no matter who you want to compare it to, you have a compelling story that others need to hear. and can help with whatever it is you're trying to embark on. And so trying to figure out what was the story, this is where our Sunrise Aloha was born. Sunrise, as everyone is familiar, they can see a sunrise, and of course we get to enjoy some beautiful ones in Hilo. Sunrise is also a metaphor for new beginnings. It's also a metaphor for interconnectedness and unlimited potential. So every day you have a sunrise. Every morning you wake up can truly be, as cliche as it sounds, a new day. And the aloha piece of our name, Sunrise Aloha, you know that love is the most powerful source that we have in the world. And aloha means so much more than just love. And that's why it just came together. And it's the first thing that my husband and I have, other than the tour, which he rode a bicycle 18,000 miles for veterans.
And I want you to talk a little bit more about that. There's a whole bunch of entrepreneurial lessons in that I'd like you to share.
Yeah, considering he hadn't owned a bike since high school and he was in his 50s and he just had this dream. I think he got 15 miles and then had this dream, was inspired by looking at Mount Rainier to ride a bicycle throughout the country. And I had never even known what an RV was. You know, it doesn't matter where you're starting from. It really matters where you want to head. And I think that I feel more like a kid in a candy store or dessert store or a bakery where I can pick anything I want, and that's the challenge I have now, is where to get started. But what we found when we created Sunrise Aloha is we wanted to create a foundation upon everything else that followed would make sense. And so our unifying standard for that is live life to the fullest with love in service. In service has been such a part of our lives to begin with, and it was Doug's dad in it was his dying service. The night before, he gave a service and helped somebody who needed he was a Episcopal priest, needed his support, and these were the words that came out of his mouth, and that's what it captured exactly what Doug and I really believe. Live life to the fullest with love in service. And they work together. And so Sunrise Aloha, if people want to connect with us later, we are still building the website, but you can reach us at our email. It's info@sunrisealoha.com. So info@sunrisealoha.com. And the phone number to reach us is 888-91-ALOHA. So okay. 888-91-ALOHA, and ALOHA in the letters on your telephone are 25642.
All right. Now, aloha means a lot in Hawaiian. And the whole Aloha Way that you're talking about, and listeners, the reason why I'm having Deborah talk about this is because she's got a very interesting philosophy and approach to entrepreneurs that I really believe will benefit you. So, Deborah, can you just go into some more detail about the Aloha Way approach?
Absolutely. What my husband and I have decided, we're more like adventure guides. You know, you have to have fun, and you want life to be an adventure. And so what we do is we lead fellow adventurers to live the life we're meant to and love the way we want to. And that's through a combination of tools. One is the ALOHA Way, which is the umbrella for a lot of insights, experiences, where we help people learn how to honor and respect their own path rather than trying to follow someone else's, and igniting their potential to live lives of meaning and impact beyond themselves. And so each letter of Aloha, they're integrated. They have to work together. We call them elements. You know, people can call them pillars and other things, principles, but we call them elements, just like our life elements. Just like the ancient elements that's in our symbol of Sunrise Aloha of earth, wind, fire, and water, right? The colors there. And so how they work together is the A is authentic alignment. That's harmony with yourself and your values. And we already talked about how having a strong foundation of who you are, what do you value, that is something, no matter how adverse the situation will be or how things seem to look, not working well, many people stop moments before they reach success. They give up. And so authentic alignment helps you be harmony with yourself and your values, and you really pay attention to what it is that your heart is telling you, that your whole body is telling you to move on. The second letter, L, has to do with loving connection. And loving connection is how to love and honor others. It's you love yourself, but it's also how do you love and honor others. It's those connections. I talked about quiet strength and engaging people. And even I have bad habits of words that I use that are inappropriate and have to correct myself. But loving kindness, I think that's really the basis in all your actions that I learned at that very special Author 101 course that we went to. Was the loving kindness piece was why I always wanted to come from that place, no matter how bashed I got. And then being openly vulnerable, knowing you're going to get hurt. That comes under loving connection. To me, it's such a huge piece of who we are and how we deal with others. And then the O, the open heart, is how to engage your imagination, inspiration, and inquiry. And that is something that our creators of the entrepreneurs know well. But we call it open heart instead of open mind because your mind will tell you one thing if you do it in a vacuum, whereas when you engage your heart, you engage all of your body. And the H, that's hunger for wisdom. You free yourself from your old patterns of thinking and ignite your unique potential. And the final one, acting in service. Here's where, again, the rubber meets the road. To live a life of meaning and impact beyond yourself. And a huge part of that is having not just a passion for doing things, which we have people with lots of passion, but they have to have the opportunity to act outside themselves like we did our journey. And the final one is that commitment to act. When you are confronted with that situation where you have a choice you can make, that you have that courage and you are not judging, but you know to act in order to make a difference.
So the ALOHA Way is authentic alignment, loving connection, open heart, hunger for wisdom, and acting in service. Did I get all those right?
Yes, those are the elements. They all work together. No,
those are beautiful because as entrepreneurs and human beings on the planet, if we do that and we understand who we are and what do we value, as you said, then we're going to be very successful at what we do and attract people to us that want what we are supplying.
Absolutely. And some people, when they look at the definition, and it's really how you live it. In fact, we just did a workshop, and it was a 3-hour workshop, and we really believe it needs to be a full-day workshop because it's lots of activities. You have to, for example, the loving connection. If I were to grab your arm across the water, each of our arms would reflect that important, the quiet strength and openly vulnerable. And then
we're going to have to grab those arms across the commercial break, so we'll be right back.
And her guests return after this short break. Welcome back to the Entrepreneur Masterclass. Equipped with the right skills, knowledge, and most of all the right questions, you too can have the success you want. With more of today's show, here is best-selling author, international speaker, and business strategist, Laura Atchison.
Hey, everybody. Before the commercial break snagged us, we were talking about loving connection, and Deborah and I were reaching across the commercial break to talk about that. So, Deborah, can you finish up your thoughts and the visual?
Yes. So one was the quiet strength, reaching out, as I mentioned about how to be able to stand up and do those things that you need to when situations aren't what you want. And then the openly vulnerable would be you reaching back, and that has to do with even when you get hurt, even when you get beaten down, is to constantly not shut yourself off because we are human beings and we need to stay openly vulnerable in order to live our lives, to have the joy, to open ourselves with the joy. And so then imagine a lei, because a lei, L-E-I, from Hawaii, imagine that wrapped around our hands in a loving way, which represents loving kindness. You know, it's not there to restrain us. It's there to lovingly wrap that relationship in the way that we connect so that we can achieve that love and honor each other.
That's just a totally beautiful thought. I'm still processing that, so thank you for that.
I'm glad. It's just so beautiful. So we'll get a real lei for you when you come. Okay?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I have a question for you, because this is something that I know a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, and you know that I've struggled with it since I sold my IT company, where I had a more product-based business, to what I do now. You have a different take on the definition of success and what success means. Can you explain your definition of success and why?
Yes, I would love to, because I had to wrestle with this myself. I mean, it really, what's success? You know, you're fed this thing from society that tells you, you know, you're either on autopilot or you have a chaotic response to the situations around you. You're being told, well, you have to do this and that. Like when we graduated from West Point, get married, have children, you know, have a job, you know, all these things. That's really what we call the control paradigm. And the inquiry paradigm releases you to do something so much more, as we discussed. So when you talk about success, here's another thing that will sound cliche, but too bad. You know, being the entrepreneur, being successful is not the end result. It really isn't. You're going to get end results that are going to be it. But if you focus only on that and miss the journey, then you have missed so much out of life. And an easy way to talk about just a little piece of that, and then I'll go on, is the fact that preparing for our workshop, I actually was getting stressed. And remember what I said about stress? When you start getting stressed, you start going to your reptilian brain, not your wisdom, and your mouth goes downward and whatever. And Doug, bless his heart, he says, we need to have an attitude adjustment here. We need to get the right mindset. So we flipped on the music by Pharrell, Happy.
Yep.
And he grabbed me and we started dancing, right? And so, you know, and then I realized I'd wasted so much of my life wanting to be perfect, you know, worrying about having the perfect outcome and getting things all lined up, that I lost the joy of, and it's been stealing my joy for years. So the fun is a huge part of success, and that is in the journey, every day smiling and being grateful for all the blessings you have, and know that being creative means trial and error, means falling down and rising up again. But you know what? You get up faster. You see people with moving targets, and some people just want the static target. But I'm sorry, the target's moving and changing shape and doing things right now, just like in terrorism, which I worked in quite a bit. You know, the whatever you want is going to be moving, so it's going to be more about that trajectory and being flexible to move it, adapt it, and have fun. You know, it's like riding that roller coaster, and you can enjoy the highs and the lows, because you know that the lows are just teaching you things that you wouldn't know any other way. And if you pay attention, then the highs will be even higher. And so it's doing things, it's waking up in the morning, loving what you're doing, knowing what you're doing matters, because sometimes we discount our contributions. And, you know, we need 10 attaboys for one, oh, you're not doing well, and suddenly we focus on you're not doing well. Well, that's not what matters. What matters is to believe in yourself. We believe in you, and believe that you know what you're doing is what you should be doing. And that's our, really, as we think about success, that's really, you're doing it for all the right reasons, because you know your values, you know yourself, and you just have to have faith in yourself and say, okay, I can't look around the corner, but you know what? I believe, and I believe in myself, and I can grab emotion that I had from my past, and I'm going to bring that forward, and I know what it's going to feel like. And when we do that, life is joyful, and our connections are deep, and everything we do just is you just can't believe how wonderful life can be. And the things that happen that are bad in our lives that we think are bad, that's judging. Oh, by the way, stop judging. I'll tell you that those things that are unfortunate, because unfortunate things happen, they will happen. People die. We go get through divorce. Heck, I went through 2 before I found the love of my life. And I'll just say, I was ready for him. I don't think I would have been ready for him before if I hadn't done those other things and loved deeply and been disappointed in myself. And so that success is, please don't give up on yourself. In the military, I dealt with so many people who felt that a breakup in relationship was the straw that broke the camel's back and they ended their lives. That's how seriously people do it. And all I want to do is hug them and embrace them and tell them just how wonderful they are, and that, yes, it's going to be tough, but I admire you. You have courage to be your best and to overcome obstacles, because that's what life is. It's like a tree that gets blown in the wind. Hey, that's got strong root system. A tree that's never been buffeted by the wind, guess what? It's got a shallow root system, so that when the wind blows, boom, it falls over. Be strong. Plant those seeds. Let them grow. But be unafraid of the challenges and obstacles that hit us in life. We're alive. It's a miracle we are. If you go back, it's like we are so lucky, because every statistic in scientific world tells us we shouldn't be, right? But we are. Love it.
Yeah, and you've seen so much craziness and judgment, and you were judged constantly at West Point. You're a female in the military, rose to one of the top ranks. You were in countries that didn't value women whatsoever and forget women in a command role. And this is the outlook on life you came out with, and that is such a gift.
I will tell you again, the countries may not value women, but the people do. The people I connected with, that's what matters. And all that garbage was making me stronger. And I understood that. And sometimes people would wonder why I'd smile. I get in trouble for smiling, oh, by the way, especially in the military. But I really, it was like, oh, this is a challenge. Oh, man, he's really going off on me, or she's really going off on me. What's going on here? Let me try to, think about how I can engage, right?
Yeah.
It's life.
Engage. That's a huge thing, is engage. You need to meet them where they are and then bring them up.
I would say I meet them where they want to be, and I help them get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts you'd like to share with my listeners today?
I think that what you do each time you invite guests, I was able to listen to several of your guests that you've had on, be hungry for that wisdom. Wisdom is so much more than just the details. It's taking what you find out in life, embrace the ups and downs, and ask yourself better and better questions, as you have constantly tried to emphasize. It'll be the difference of your day. It's like a change in attitude has its power to change my day, right? And so those questions we ask ourselves and others, here's the power of a question I want to leave your audience with. I, too, can get upset and angry when I had a car fire and all sorts of bad things happen. And I was ready to nuke the repair company that was working with me. And I went to my husband after I had tried a couple things, and I made things a little worse. And all he had to do, he asked me a question, and that completely turned around my mindset, because you transform. I would say you're not looking to stop the anger. You have to transform it. That's energy. You have to move it into something that's productive. And don't be afraid to do that. And the faster you can do it. When he asked me that question, I ran right upstairs and inspired a book called Grab Your Bull by the Tail, which I'm writing right now. But it inspired me to do that. And in a week, I got everything I wanted. So nobody else changed, just me. And I had all that training, and still I could get angry. And yet, once I paused, and that takes patience. You want to act, you think you have to because that's what the control tells you to do. But when you pause and really access your wisdom, oh my goodness, it's like your book. What would a wise woman do, right? It's asking those questions. So thank you for what you do for your entrepreneurs, and I look forward to every time we get together and getting a chance to meet some of your great people.
Thanks. And you have up on some link, and I'm going to put it up on my site, a link to your narrated sort of children's book, but I think it's masterful for adults about that bullying the bull. So can you quickly share the link, because we've got about a minute and a half till the end of the show? If
they go to www.ponoandkuleana, Pono and ANDKULEANA.com. It's a children's book that's grounded in leadership principles. How when under adversity, if we work together and apply our love, we can do anything.
And it's truly wonderful, and I will put a link up on LauraAtchison.com. Click on Entrepreneur Masterclass on the right-hand side, and you'll be able to see the link to get to that video. Thank you so much, Deborah, for being here today, and for all that you do and continually do to support entrepreneurs and human beings on this planet. So I appreciate you. And everybody, if you want to catch replays of this, you can catch us on Stitcher and iTunes. Remember, the right questions can change your life. So what are you asking yourself and others today? And keep the Aloha Way going, as Deborah talked about. And if you missed any part of the show, catch us on iTunes and Stitcher. Thanks, Deborah. Have a great day, everyone, and happy July 4th.
Thank you so much, Laura. You too, and everyone else.
Thanks for being a part of today's edition of Entrepreneur Masterclass. Why not pick up a copy of Laura's best-selling book, What Would a Wise Woman Do? Questions to ask along the way at your favorite bookstore or online today. Then contact Laura on Facebook, Twitter, and on the web at www.lauraac.com.